Good evening, class. This week's video will be about chapters 11 and 12, some of the key learning objectives, some of my takeaways from that, some opinions I have on these two chapters. Chapter 11, we go over curriculum and standards. We start off the chapter by asking the question, what do students learn from curriculum? And really, easily put, it's everything that you're going to need to be successful. Everything that's going to prepare you to survive in today's world. I know even myself, I still use information and knowledge that I gained from elementary school. I still use to this day. So I think curriculum could be just really anything that's going to prepare you to be successful. The chapter goes on to talking about 4 different types of curriculum. It's hidden curriculum, the null curriculum, extracurricular, and co-curricular. Some of the things that the chapter also talks about that should be attained through curriculum, or some of the effects or consequences that would be to provide employees with literate literate workers, desegregate society, reduce crime and poverty, maintain competitive edge in world economy, and educate students to participate in democracy. These are some of the things that we've looked to get out of curriculum. The next question, or the next learning objective, was how curriculum is developed. I have some different thoughts on it. I think they still go in line with what the book's speaking to, but I've always believed that curriculum should be data-driven, meaning that we should analyze what we want to be, or where we want to be at a certain level, and through analysis determine where we are at each grade level, and develop a curriculum to elevate us to that next level till we get to the point where our end game is where we want to be come graduation time. I know the text talks about a method of curriculum development, what educational purposes should the school seek to attain, what educational experiences can be provided that can attain these purposes, how can the experience be organized, and how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained. Again, in my opinion, that just goes back to data analysis to see if we've reached our end goal, going back and looking at each grade level and see if we've attained those purposes that we've looked to do. And if we haven't, then we can always develop our curriculum meeting that way. The next, we talk about influences on curriculum. That's, I think, is a bit of a controversial segment. Our curriculum is influenced by so many things. I mean, everything from the textbook publishers to social issues to political agendas. When we switched over, we've switched over to so many different methods. Common Core. Before that, no Child Left Behind. I think those influence our curriculum. We receive these standardized tests, and we look to teach those tests. And I think that really influences our curriculum development. Of course, the government wanting to have the federal government wanting to have a more standardized or national approach, while states also want to have that individuality. I think those issues also influence our curriculum development. And then the text goes on to talking about roles of standards in today's classroom. I think good and bad. It's hard to say. I think that there should be a standard. I think there should be a way to hold some accountability. I think accountability needs to be there. But I think it's so vague in the or there's too many variables in standardized tests. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, though, talking about standards in today's classroom, I think one of the biggest issues that I really disagree. Of course, I'm a little biased. Is where they state that administrators are more worried about test scores, where teachers are more worried about education, or educating their students. I don't think that could be further from the truth. I know my spouse, who's a principal administrator, is very concerned with student development and students truly learning rather than just simply test scores. I think that's a generalization that's untrue. And then we go on to talk about how Common Core initiative has influenced education. Again, that goes back to what I was talking about. How they want a more standardized way of approaching education, more of a national standardized way of approaching, which I think may not be totally fair, being there's such different demographics, social economic structures in different states. To have us to simply just lump everyone together, I think it's difficult to compare. You're kind of, I think a lot of times you're comparing apples to oranges when you're looking at nationalized standardized tests, which goes into our next chapter 12, assessing student learning. I know we use a lot of standardized tests to assess student learning and achievement, which again isn't always the proper way to do things. I think there's so many different ways to assess students. You know, the text goes into describing how assessment, how the role of what is the role of assessment in teaching. Of course, we talk about how students are learning, if they're being taught properly. That gives us a real assessment, gives us an opportunity to evaluate ourselves and how to become a better teacher. Not necessarily, it doesn't solely rest on the student if they're learning or not. It also falls, these assessments also fall on the teacher and being allowed to improve or to see where they can improve. Also, we talk about standardized assessments used in education. Again, these are the standardized tests that we were talking about in the previous chapter. Again, comparing student learning with clearly defined standards, and providing a uniform method of comparing students. Again, where I just don't agree. I think there's more apples oranges when you're looking at socioeconomic differences and resources in some states, some schools compared to others. Then we go on to talk about the high stakes tests. I have mixed feelings about this, to be honest with you. When we talk about test taking, they put so much onus on it, but I always think back of a joke that I had heard. It's a comedian named Daniel Tosh talking about students who claim they're not good at test taking. He always says, "Oh yeah, I'm also a good painter. It's just the brush strokes that mess me up." So it's kind of, in my opinion, a bit funny. I'm not good at the part where you check to see how much I know. When you're talking about standard tests and the high stakes, I think there has to be some sort of a method of assessing student achievement. Obviously, I don't have the answer of what the perfect solution is, but I think there should be something to go along that lines of a test or a method of assessing real education. And the chapter goes on. I know I apologize. My video is a little bit long. It's just a lot of information in these two chapters. How teachers can develop high quality classroom assessments, and to that I just go to the thought that there's just so many different ways of assessing learning. Again, like I said earlier, there should be some type of assessment to indicate learning or to show that there is learning being done. but I think there's just so many different ways to do that, and there's no one real single way to do it. And as the chapter says, I also agree that students will see themselves more as learners, and they will improve as learners if they understand that they have different avenues of demonstrating their learning. So if they have different understand or different ways to show their learning, to show that they are grasping the information and reaching the standards that need to be there, I think we definitely need to look into those things, and rather than just a simple one solution for everyone. So again, I apologize for this going so long, but there's such a lot of information to go over, and I thank you all for having patience and watching my video.